everyone, I'm Maria, COO of Tech in Asia. Welcome back to this video series by Tech in Asia and Facebook titled Evolving E-commerce, where we'll be hearing from industry leaders as we uncover and decipher the latest e-commerce trends making waves in APAC. For this second episode, we'll be talking about brand building in this new era of e-commerce. E-commerce businesses have been known to focus on performance marketing, prioritizing lower funnel outcomes like conversion and short-term metrics such as cost per acquisition and return on investment. Upper funnel objectives, or brand building, is often deemed as unnecessary and unmeasurable. As the e-commerce industry evolves, however, more and more players are jumping in at the same time that consumer preferences are changing rapidly. In this competitive landscape, brands are increasingly feeling the need to stand out from the crowd. As a result, we've seen a wave of e-commerce businesses rethinking their marketing strategies and the need to integrate performance marketing and brand building. To help us dissect the importance of brand building, I'm joined by Ravi Desai, Director for Mass and Brand Marketing at Amazon India, Facebook's Sachin Sharma, Category Director at APAC, and Dhruv Chadha, Regional Client Lead, also at Facebook. Welcome all. Okay, so maybe let's jump into our conversation with a quick overview of the topic. This one's for Sachin and Ravi. So given e-commerce's evolution over the last few years, how has marketing changed along the way?
So, the rise of e-commerce has definitely influenced marketing in so many ways, right? Which includes changes in consumer behavior or the way we look at the media landscape or the role of sales channels for marketers. But one of the most significant shifts that I would like to talk about today is really the surge in importance of performance advertising. In the last few years, we've seen the emergence of digital brands who have really come in and created sizable businesses largely on the back of performance advertising. Now, this has definitely made marketers reevaluate or readjust some of the traditional brand building models. And this has also generated a lot of discussion about brand advertising versus performance advertising, what's more important, where to pivot, how to balance. Now, this is playing out in very interesting ways for different industries. If we talk about more traditional industries, let's take the example of CPG. That's where I do most of my work. What we used to talk about day in and day out at that time was offline sales, volumes, market share, brand equity. Now, when we talk to our CPG, advertising partners, they are talking about all of this, but they are also talking the language of performance marketing. They are making big, bold moves in commerce, and they are also quite focused on things like ROAS, cost per acquisition, some of the things that you were talking about at the outset. On the other hand, when we think about commerce, we see an almost opposing trend where historically advertisers who are heavy on performance advertising are now starting to talk about importance of brand building. And they are talking to us about, hey, how can we build brand? How can we build brand equity on your platforms? So this is a very big shift for the advertising industry overall. As we are now seeing a very rapid convergence of brand and performance advertising. And this is the future of marketing. It's arrived. So the big question for us is really not so much about one versus the other, brand versus performance, but more about how can we combine the power of the two to maximize total outcomes for a business.
The way we tend to think about it is more integrated marketing, right? Where we're not compartmentalizing it between upper funnel brand building versus lower funnel performance marketing. I think it is more for us about the context of the customer, the opportunity or the challenge, and the objective with which we are deploying the right kind of marketing message using the right kind of channel. Just to give you an example, if you think about India, there are 100 million customers who have shopped online. Basis iCube or other such reports available publicly. And then there are 500 million people on the internet, right? So there is almost a 400 million base of customers who haven't yet gone online to shop. Now you need to build trust, you need to build awareness, you need to build consideration with that 400 million base, which are more upper funnel brand building like objectives, and therefore come with a set of channels that work best for these objectives. And then there are, for the first 100 million, you really want to expect to sort of speak to them at the right moment where you can differentiate why your proposition makes the most sense for them versus others available as options to them, right? And that's more a lower funnel kind of an objective where you want her to take the right next step with an Amazon or become a Prime member or what have you. So that's where perhaps more the performance end of the spectrum, were to serve this kind of an objective better than an upper funnel objective. So we don't think of these as, hey, is this a brand or a performance marketing opportunity? We think of them as an integrated marketing opportunity, depending on what your objective is with what kind of a customer opportunity or challenge on that.
Sure, absolutely. So we've kind of jumped right in and started talking about upper, middle, and bottom of the funnel. Maybe, Sachin, if we can take a step back and you can help educate us. Can you help define the difference between performance and brand marketing, and then how those two work together in the marketing mix for integrated marketing, as Ravi was saying?
So in very simple terms, brand advertising is the form of advertising where your objective is to capture people's attention, create awareness for the brand, also create some positive perceptions, associations for the brand, basically aimed at creating a brand preference for your brand over the others, and a purchase intent, so that when your target consumer goes out to buy the category, they are purchasing your brand. Performance advertising, on the other hand, aims to drive immediate action, direct action, and in most cases, that direct action is a purchase. So it's closing the loop and, in a way, monetizing, the brand preference and the purchase intent that you built with your brand advertising into sales. What we believe is that they both have distinct roles to play in the marketing mix. When you do brand advertising well, it means that you are getting more and more people to have more and more intention to buy your brand every time. And therefore, over time, you're building a stronger baseline for the sales of your brand. Performance advertising, meanwhile, is very effective at creating short-term sales spikes by accelerating the consumer journey and taking them right through to purchase. What we've seen is when you focus on only one of the two, you miss out on opportunities. If you're doing only brand advertising, you're not maximizing short-term sales. If you're doing only performance advertising, you'll end up with a weaker baseline. When you put the both together and synergistically, that's when the dragon tail effect kicks in, which is what we've explained in our white paper as well, where your brand advertising is actually consistently growing your brand baseline and providing higher jump-off points for your sales spikes to happen. And what that means is you get better outcomes, bigger outcomes, both in the short term and in the long term.
Dhruv, let's bring you into this conversation. How are you seeing some of these new effects play out in the industry? And are there any other trends that we should be paying attention to from a marketing perspective?
Sure, Maria. So e-commerce in Asia and marketing, particularly for this category, is at a pretty interesting stage. A recent stat from eMarketer suggests that 3 out of the 5 fastest growing countries on e-commerce sales in 2020 actually come from Asia. So the growth for this category is going to be significant. Yet, if you actually come to think of the opportunity Ravi was referring to, only 50% of consumers who live in this part of the world have actually ever shopped a product online. So I think the job for both brand marketing and performance marketing at an Uber level is going to be, how do you continue growing existing sales from customers who are already privy to online shopping? But how do you also onboard the remaining 50% of online shoppers who've never bought a product online? And I think the way brand marketing and performance marketing is going to play out on this is going to be 3 distinct ways. I think brand marketing will play a huge role in removing a lot of barriers and hesitations of potential online customers. There are quite a few barriers: product quality, refund policy, time of delivery, category barriers. I personally was not comfortable buying furniture online before the pandemic. And I think brand marketing in a huge way will play a role of building that trust with consumers as we get into this phase of growth moving forward from here. I think the second trend that's going to play out is customers in this part of the world continue to flirt with multiple e-commerce websites. Loyalty is still not established. A research we did with Bain showed that in 2020, customers shopped across 8 different websites through the entire year. So I think moving forward, a huge role for brand marketing is going to be to forge a relation between the brand and customer that goes beyond just the immediate sale, but it's something that builds a relation for the future. And lastly, as Sachin's pointed this out, performance marketing is the backbone of these organizations. So I think growing existing sales from customers who are already on the platform, increasing the frequency of purchase will be a core component. Performance marketing will continue to execute both efficiently and effectively as we get into this next phase of marketing for these companies.
All right. So Ravi, you at Amazon, you're the one out there walking the walk here. So can you share how Amazon has incorporated some of these trends into its marketing strategy?
It's great to sort of index the answer in the context of a couple of geographies in the Asia Pacific region. So let's think about India on one side and maybe Singapore on the other, right? India is a 500 million and growing Indians on the internet, right? If you look at the iCube reports that come out once in every 6 months, and maybe less than 100 million people have shopped online, right? So you have 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 who have tried online shopping yet, and there are 400 million people, and the internet penetration is growing rapidly, as we all know in this area, who haven't tried online shopping yet at all, right? So you need to, going back to the earlier point I was making, you need to think about then where this customer is with respect to her understanding of e-commerce. What could be the triggers that would perhaps get her to try us for the first time? What would be the barriers that might hold her back? And then craft your marketing plan to be able to sort of serve that opportunity for this customer as well, right? We also know through some other studies that less than 150 million Indians understand English well enough to be comfortable to transact in English, right? And hence Amazon in India is now available across 6 to 8 different languages that can cater to regional parts of the country that don't necessarily converse in English well enough to be able to transact in it. Now, you need a through the funnel approach to be able to create awareness of the fact that you don't need to be conversant in English to be able to shop on Amazon. It's now available in your local language. And you also don't need a credit card to be able to shop on Amazon. You can actually shop without having a credit card because less than 3 to 4% of Indians have access to credit cards, right? So that's one kind of an opportunity and an approach to that. If you think about Singapore, 5.5 million people, 85% penetration of e-commerce, a very different reality, a very different landscape, right? A city country, you could perhaps traverse across it in 45 minutes, and therefore convenience is really what the customer is seeking. Of course, there is a need for value, given these are typical Asian trends which tend to run across some of these countries. And as a late entrant into a landscape which is pretty crowded, you require a very different kind of an approach to firstly differentiate your offering. To Dhruv's point, give people more than just a rational reason to switch from another platform to try and come and buy on Amazon.sg. And you then have a program like Prime that you want to create awareness for and drive people to try out the Prime program through a free trial, and then hopefully have a great experience in that free trial period to sort of become a more regular paying Prime member. So, like I said, 2 very different landscapes, very different customer cohorts, very different opportunities, and therefore the use of the channels across the funnel with different objectives across just 2 countries in this region.
That's a great comparison. If we can stick with you, are there also other changing consumer habits that you've been seeing out of these 2 major markets that you're working in?
Many come to mind. I would pick one, which is the role of the smartphone in the customer's life. The internet penetration acceleration that's happening is happening on the back of mobile devices in a country like India. This is now not just a communications device, but it is almost an expression of the customer's upward mobility or aspirations or freedom at its most fundamental level. And therefore, there is a fairly steep learning curve with respect to what the internet can do for her, which is beginning to sort of percolate into tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 India. And what used to take many months for a customer to go from typical social media, just chat with family, those kinds of uses of the internet, to now starting to pay online, transact online. The amount of time it has taken for a customer to go from new to internet to new to payments to new to e-commerce is literally crashing with every passing year, right? And mind you, we are going deeper into the country, so you would expect it to be, the trend to be in the reverse direction, whereas in reality, it is the cycles are becoming shorter.
Fascinating. Dhruv, over to you. What else should we know? Should e-commerce businesses know about the consumer behavior and their preferences in this region?
This is a very quickly evolving space in terms of what are the new emerging trends that are appearing as customers. And as you can imagine, the pandemic in some way and form has accelerated a lot of them. what I'd probably share is just out of personal experience. Obviously, the trends is one thing, but we as customers are facing some of these changing habits as well. And I thought might be interesting to share my perspective on some of those. The first one, which is quite personal, is my visit to an e-commerce website till about a year and a half or two ago used to be like a visit to a mall or a grocery store. Only when I needed to buy something would I actually go ahead and start, will actually walk into the mall. But now I realize that I'm actually discovering and buying products just because of the time that I spend on my feed. And I'm discovering a lot of these products and services on my feed. So I think the shift from planned shopping to discovery shopping has started becoming a huge phenomenon. The second one that comes top of mind to me is I think customers are also looking to work with brands and be serviced by brands that are, at the end of the day, a lot more human and sustainable. Again, the research that we were talking about with Bain that we did, 80% of customers in Southeast Asia have actually indicated that they're willing to pay almost a good 10% more for working with brands and services that are environmentally friendly. And I think the future of a lot of these trends, how marketers incorporate this into their ongoing communication, which is what is the larger good that they bring to the world, how they as a company for good, will become a huge differentiator when customers think about who to transact with and who to shop from.
Okay, so these e-commerce businesses have their work cut out for them. There's changing consumer preferences. There's changing in the marketing side. The landscape's getting increasingly competitive. So how can the e-commerce business leverage certain platforms such as Facebook to put together a sustainable digital marketing strategy for themselves?
We see successful e-commerce businesses who build a sustained marketing strategy on our platform do two things very effectively, if I may say so. The first is these e-commerce businesses leverage the sheer scale of reach on our platform. Ravi pointed out that when consumers for the first time experience internet, messaging or social media becomes the first point where they actually experience the internet. And I think if you're a potential e-commerce company willing to acquire new customers or transact from existing customers, Facebook becomes right in the center of that. So I think leveraging the sheer scale of our platform becomes a huge advantage to these e-commerce companies. The second thing I would probably shed the light on is successful marketing strategies on our platform actually go to using both brand marketing and performance marketing in a very effective way and form. And we've spoken about the balance between the two and the importance of having a convergence between the two. I think what makes e-commerce strategies even more successful is when they start using measurement as a way to constantly learn and iterate on their strategies, continue to get the highest ROIs of our platform, and then in the long term, achieve both affinity and equity amongst these customers, but also in the short term, drive sales as they're expecting to do on an ongoing basis. And I think businesses who approach marketing on our platform with that lens of merging the two and having a convergence of outcomes coming out of both brand and performance marketing execute very successfully on our platform.
Ravi, can you speak to Amazon's experience and how you use platforms such as Facebook to put together your marketing strategy?
I'd say +1 to both Dhruv's points, right? I think reach, especially for landscapes like India, some of the other nations, and it's an early internet experience that the customer is going through. Opinions are being formed, trust is being built, and you want to be amongst the few brands that is able to sort of speak to that customer one-to-one. Right. And perhaps a dimension or nuance on the other hand is our ability to be able to pick up the right signals about the customer and then craft a more personalized communications plan or an approach. Right. So you have massive reach at one end of the spectrum, and then you have the ability to sort of signal specific messages to a specific cohort or even an individual customer. I think those have been some of the more successful interventions from our side.
So let's leave our audience with some thoughts about the future. How do you all anticipate marketing for e-commerce businesses changing in the next years to come? Sachin, if we can start with you on this.
I think as we look forward, we anticipate a few things will happen to commerce industry. One, the industry will mature. There will be more competition. And as there is more competition, obviously product and service will remain important, but their role as differentiators within the category is likely to diminish over time. And it's just the way industries do evolve, right? And I borrow again from, say, CPG, where, take hand washing soap, for example, was a disruptive innovation at the time that it came in many decades ago. and very few people could make it and could distribute it at scale. But gradually, those advantages erode over time. And then companies have to find different ways to differentiate themselves and create a brand preference, a stickiness with their consumers. And I guess commerce companies would also have to do it as they move forward. The other thing is once the initial rapid growth or the low-hanging fruit is exhausted, then you need to look at expanding your user base, which, as Dhruv was talking about it, will come by unlocking barriers to adoption and actually communicating certain benefits and value to target consumers. And lastly, I think the industry would also need to look beyond user penetration at some point and look to create loyalty, look to create premiumization to drive a profitability of the industry. And again, in all of these jobs to be done, brand advertising would have a very key role to play. And therefore, I think that this trend will not only continue, it will accentuate over time. And we definitely, are focusing a lot on working with our partners to devise these new strategies for the future, which will help them build sustainable and winning businesses.
Dhruv, thoughts on what's ahead for brand marketers?
Marketing for e-commerce companies is going to go now beyond price discounts and deals. I know that's been a huge enabler to acquire a lot of customers. But I think moving forward, we would start seeing them communicating a lot about the superior customer service, the greater good a company drives to build some affinity with customers that they're bringing onto the platform. So that's going to be the first big trend we see that's going to change. The second one is going to be discovery shopping is becoming more profound than planned shopping. I've kind of mentioned this earlier. No longer will consumers look for only specific events or occasions to shop. They're always shopping, especially when they're on our website and our services. They're perpetually discovering new products. And I think the way this would change marketing is prior to this, a lot of focus used to be on key events like Ramadan or Diwali for that matter. While I think that's going to be of significant importance to a lot of these companies, they will also start identifying new events or new moments where a consumer can shop besides these events that will happen. And then the last one, I think that's going to play a very profound role is going to be just social media and influencers and video on our platform will play a very important role in the journey of both discovering new products, evaluating new products, or evaluating a new service. I think this is going to be a space that's going to only continue to grow. We've seen the trend already. 24 months ago, an e-commerce company would fundamentally stay away from video on our platform because that was considered only an avenue for brand building. But now you actually notice that the adoption of video and influencers has become a huge growth driver for a lot of investments from these e-commerce companies. So I think on our platform, that's going to be the third more profound trend.
Cool. Those sound like fun. Ravi, if we can end this conversation with you, curious to hear, any marketing strategies and plans that you have to maybe take advantage of some of the trends that Dhruv just mentioned, or to figure out how Amazon can continue to penetrate the Southeast Asia and Singapore markets.
I had a slightly contra answer to your question. At Amazon, we tend to focus on things that are not likely to change, right, for the coming few decades, following Jeff's advice that if you build your business around things that are likely to remain evergreen, then you've got a great business for yourself, right? So we keep reminding ourselves of a few things. One, the fundamentals of retail as a business: selection, pricing, convenience. Customers are not likely to want less selection, higher prices, or slower deliveries, right? These three things will not change. Number two, customers will continue to be divinely discontent. So what delighted me yesterday satisfies me today and feels like it's kind of the past by the time I wake up tomorrow, right? So that's the second bit. I think that's not going to change. So we will need to be innovating faster across not just the fundamentals, but even our GTM, our marketing approaches, and so on, right? And the third bit, which is more an internal, leadership principle at Amazon, is customer obsession, where as long as you know what's not going to change and you know that she's going to be dissatisfied with your level of service very quickly, you can continue to remain obsessed and remain inventive and innovative around what you expect the customer to want. So, like I said, I mean, we don't spend too much energy in forecasting trends. We sort of try and double down on things that we know are not likely to change and differentiate ourselves and in the process win trust from customers.
That's awesome. And that is obviously some of the magic that's driving much of Amazon's success. Okay. Ravi, Sach, and Dhruv, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today and sharing all these really interesting insights. Standing out in a good way in the crowded online space is indeed a challenge for e-commerce businesses, but the tools seem available for them to start doing so right now. Folks, stay tuned for the next and final episode where we'll be looking at how e-commerce businesses can go beyond mobile first and start jumping into the world of automation, AI, and apps. See you then.